This time it's the turn of conditional access in Azure AD and Microsoft 365. What's new? What's cool? And as always, what can it do for you? Greetings my fellow YouTubers, welcome back to the channel. Andy here, Microsoft MVP as well as a Microsoft certified trainer. This is the channel to visit if you're interested in becoming not only certified but better educated in all things Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Azure. It's packed with tips, tricks and tons of demos. All right, in this week's episode, we're going to take a look at the new features that come part of Azure AD's conditional access. It's an absolutely critical tool to keep your organization safe and secure. Now, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd love it if you go ahead, click on that subscribe button, ring the bell, and you're not likely to miss out on the good stuff in the future. And as always, I love your comments, questions, and feedback, so get those questions in down below. All right, so without any more jibber jabber and discussions, I think it's time for a demo. What do you think? Let's have a look. So I'm kicking off in Azure Active Directory and I'm going to come into Azure AD and I'm going to scroll down the list here and I'm going to stop at the Security Blade. So here in the Security Blade, this is everything that you need to get started with conditional access. Now, just to set the scene, I'm also using identity protection here. And if I just go into identity protection, I've got two policies here. So the first is the user risk policy, and I've added in 3 important users. And this might represent your senior management, let's say. And what I've done is I've labeled them risk high. And I've also said, okay, allow access, but require a password change for those users. With a sign-in risk policy, I've done the same thing, same 3 users, high risk, but this time I require multi-factor authentication if they're signing in, let's say, remotely. Now, just while we're here, I'm often asked, Andy, how can I force MFA on all of my users? It's done here. This is an MFA registration policy, and you can see it's targeting all users, and it requires MFA. So again, users would be, if I hit that, every user would require MFA. Okay. Now, just a word of warning, it's a good idea to have at least one administrator without an MFA account, and we call this a break glass account. So it's an account that you would literally lock away and keep it very safe and keep a very, very secure password on. All right. So with that in mind, now that we've done that, so just wanted to mention that, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to flip back into security. And before I show you the new features of conditional access, let's just have a quick reminder of some of the classic things that you need to remember. So here in conditional access, one of the first things you typically want to do is create a terms and conditions. So this means that whenever a user connects or joins your organization, either as a guest or as an internal member of staff, they're going to go ahead, click on those terms and conditions and accept them. The other thing is you might also have remote users. And one of the things that we've got here is the need to, let's say, have your remote users identify them devices as trusted devices. So you can click on and generate a certificate, deploy that certificate to that device. So when the user's device joins your organization, it's a trusted and it's easily authenticated. Now, what's new in 365? So, well, first of all, we've got these new authentication contexts. So what is an authentication context? Well, it's really what is the context that you want to use an app. So you can configure the apps, you can conditional access policies to an authentication context, and you can tag resources. So you could say, you know, it's for accounts, it's for engineering, it's for, you know, what's the context that you're using this for. You can learn more, so you can go to the docs.microsoft.com, and this is at the learning portal at Microsoft. So you can go into authentication context, it's in preview at the moment, and if you've created anything, so I can go ahead and I can say, yeah, okay, I want to create one here. So I'm going to call this, let's say, my trusted internal laptop. Okay, or you could type in, trusted internal user, or whatever you want to put in. You can put in a little description in there if you want to. I tell you what, I'll actually use trusted internal app. So I'm going to click on save there, and you can now see that I've got one, and I can use that as a label a little bit later on. So now what we're going to do is let's have a look at some of the new policy settings. So you'll notice here that in policies, we have got the option to now click on a drop-down arrow, and it's saying, do you want to create a new policy or create a new policy from a template? And this is currently in preview. So if I go into create a new policy, first of all, I'll call this my Oslo sales policy. Okay, and my Oslo sales policy, I'm going to target a certain group of users. Now, do I want to do guests or externals? Do I want to do any administrator roles or users within our company? So I'm going to say, yeah, let's go for users in our company. So I can scroll down and I can say, okay, let's do one for, in fact, let's do one for Oslo. So I'll bring in my Oslo IT support. So I'm going to target this for my group. Now, just to remind you what conditional access does. When a user logs in, obviously a user is authenticated by a username and password. But what conditional access does is it adds an additional layer of security. So in other words, it looks for signals. So this is a signal. If the user is a member of this group, if the user is using these actions or using these apps, they must then meet these conditions. So, for example, I can say, okay, if the user is a member of the Oslo IT group and they're using all cloud apps or selected apps. So with selected apps, you can, of course, go ahead and choose a specific app. As well as apps, you've got some other options here now as well. So if the user is performing a certain function, a certain user action, for example, registering security information or trying to join a device to an organization. And then, of course, you've got the authentication text. And here's our authentication text. So if the user is trying to install a trusted internal app, get the idea? So I'm going to say cloud apps. And for this demo, I'm going to say if the user is a member of Oslo and they're using all cloud apps. Right, so that is what I'm looking for. Then it's saying, okay, they must then meet these conditions, okay? User risk, remember this? So I'm going to say high and medium risk. So if you've got high and medium risk, that's fine. What's your sign-in risk? Again, high and medium. So you can see how this is tying in with identity protection. Device platforms. So again, for this demo, I'm specifically targeting mobile devices. So I'm going to say not any device, but Android and iOS devices this time. And I'm going to say locations. So I created a trusted location But what I'm going to do is I don't want my users being prompted for multi-factor authentication on premises. I want them, let's say if they're in a hotel or they're traveling, then I would like them to be targeted. So this time I'm going to say, yes, I want to configure this, but I want to exclude trusted locations so that they won't get prompted for multi-factor authentication. And also client apps. Now, what kind of apps do you want to allow? So a browser app, yes, fair enough, and a mobile app. But look at this, legacy authentication apps. No. These do not support multi-factor authentication. So one of the things is you definitely want to take these away because if you don't, then it will allow users to log in with a email address and a password. And that is a major security flaw. So definitely remove those old legacy clients. Now, I mentioned that there's some new things in here. Well, we have a device state preview. So again, are we going to allow all devices, including or excluding? Yes. So I'm going to say yes, that's fine. But check this out. If I go into another option here, let me just close that. If I'll say no there, actually, instead of using like that type of option, check out this, filter for devices. And this is yet another example of how Microsoft are introducing attribute-based authentication. So check it out. I could say so remember this is a condition. So my users must be running a device in this filtered policy. And this is attribute-based authentication. So I will say, okay, if the device ID, so the serial number, display name, who owns the device, if it's compliant, manufacturer. So I could say, okay, if the manufacturer equals, let's say HP, okay, and I can then say and I can say and I can say again, if the manufacturer equals, let's say Dell, okay, and you can then do, let's say another one, you can then say, hey, the model must equal, or the version must equal. Do you get the idea? So think about that. You could really, really nail down machines in your environment just to specific IDs. So not just the manufacturer, but the operating system, the physical ID, the profile type. So if you've created a profile for devices, allow all laptops, allow all workstations, the system labels, you can create your own labels. Think how granular that is. It is just awesome. Okay, so I'm going to say, I'm only going to allow HP or Dell machines on my environment. Okay, so that's an example of filtered devices. So they are the conditions. Those are the signals. Yes, so if you're a member of these group, if you're using these apps, you must then meet these conditions. So if you do meet these conditions, am I going to grant access or am I going to block access? In this case, I might say grant access, but require multi-factor authentication. And you can see there are other options here as well. You also have to assign or accept our terms and conditions. And I'm going to say I'm going to say all of them. You've got to be both MFA and accept our terms and conditions. So I'm going to select those. And now I can say, okay, do I want to control the session? So again, you can use technologies here like conditional access app control. So again, You can block downloads on a device. This is new. You can also monitor the device as well. So how is it handling? What's it doing? And you can also create your own custom policy in there as well. Okay. You can also customize something. This is new. This is called continuous access evaluation. And this is a strict enforcement. This rocks, by the way. So what we're doing here is if the user's device changes its IP address, for example, then immediately they will be disconnected or they will be blocked access. This is an awesome feature. Definitely have a look at this. So this is something called continuous access evaluation. Okay. Another thing that we've got is disable resilience. Okay, so basically, as you can see here, during an outage, Azure AD will access existing sessions while enforcing conditional access policies. If the policy can't be evaluated or determined, the resilience, so it's kind of you can create like an emergency policy. So if everything else fails, then this policy will become enforceable. So that's a really nice feature. And you can name your policy emergency policy or something like that. So it's if you want to create an additional policy. So I'm going to click on select there, and do you want to enable your policy? Yes, I do. And I'm going to go ahead now and click on that policy. So another new feature that we've been definitely waiting a long time for is this. If I go into new policies here, and if I create a new policy from a template, this is great. So this is particularly helpful if you're not familiar really with conditional access policies and you just want to perform specific tasks. So we have two categories, identities and devices. So if I take you through the first one with identities, there are a number of kind of preset templates here that you can use. For example, requiring multi-factor authentication for all admins, or another one is multi-factor authentication for guest access, or require multi-factor authentication for any kind of risky sign-ins. So we have these kind of 8 categories, and I'm sure that as time goes on, you'll have more of these coming in as well. And you can actually set them up as either on, off, or in report mode only to kind of try before you buy. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create one for my guest access here. Now you'll notice that it actually puts in a number at the beginning. This is because you can actually do this manually, conditional access policy 05, for example. And when you create your access policies, you can actually load them in sequence. Some people find that quite useful. So again, if you want to see what's in the policy summary, you can click in here and it shows you all the details. So obviously who is it affecting? So it's affecting guest access, included directory roles, what apps, it's for all apps, and it's require multi-factor authentication for guests. So right away, as I say, you can use these without really much trouble. Now, the one thing I might recommend, though, is you might want to run it in report only. So try before you buy, just to check that it meets your requirements. So I'm going to go ahead, click on next, and you can see it's actually targeting all guests and external users. So that's it. That's the policy. It's pre-created, very, very simple. If I go ahead and create the policy, it goes there and immediately generates that for me, you can see. So I'm going to go ahead, let's do a device policy now. So again, you get some more scenarios. For example, require a device or a hybrid device for admins. So that stops admins, for example, just logging in from home, let's say. So the device that they're managing, Azure Active Directory or Microsoft 365, has to be from an approved device. Again, block access for unknown or unsupported device platforms. So this is really granular. You can specify, you only want those HP, or you only want that Dell Latitude device on your network. Prevent things like persistent browser sessions. So at the end of a browser session, the cookies are deleted. So particularly nice if you're in a bank or a financial institution, because you don't want somebody logging on a session and it remembering your previous login details. Again, things like hybrid, so require compliancy on hybrid devices, or multi-factor authentication for all users. So again, very, very nice features here. And again, I'm sure that these templates will actually increase over time, if anything. So it's really nice to see them coming in. I don't know if I call them templates myself, but more of kind of scenario manager, maybe. Maybe that will change the name with that. So there you have it, Azure AD Conditional Access. Isn't that awesome? Hey, look, I really appreciate you stopping by. And of course, if you've got any questions, comments, or feedback on the session, or if there's a topic that you'd love to see in the future, then by all means, please get it down below and let me know. I'll do my best for you. All right. So if you haven't subscribed, go ahead, click on that subscribe button, ring the bell, and you're not likely to miss out on the good stuff. So until next time, you stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button, and you won't miss out.